Forever Entertainment is a company that has been seemingly getting a lot of remake projects under their belt, arguably too many that, to my understanding, have been received with very mixed reception. From games like Panzer Dragoon to the House of the Dead remake, on the surface it would seem as though Forever Entertainment is the ideal company to have remake various games. Now, I should emphasize that I have not had the opportunity to play any of their games, and this video is not meant to be a critique of any of their games per se. However, my experience with Forever Entertainment is one more of initial enthusiasm and optimism that later turned into disappointment, whilst also becoming more observant of a pattern they seem to follow with several announcements. This sort of observation really started to come to fruition for me, really due to my initial interest in the Fear Effect remake. I really wasn't aware of who Forever Entertainment was prior to the initial announcement of the Fear Effect remake. I also wasn't aware of the fact that they were the publishers for Fear Effect Sedna. But as I was waiting for more information on Fear Effect remake, that's when I began to have concerns that something wasn't quite right about this whole situation. Fear Effect Reinvented was initially announced on August 21st, 2017 with the promise of, and I quote, a true to the original remake of Fear Effect 1 with improved graphics and controls coming soon. Now, for those of you who may not be aware of what's been going on with Fear Effect Reinvented, I want you to keep that particular quote in the back of your mind because that could not be further from the truth. However, before we get into that aspect of this remake, we need to talk about everything that happened between 2017 to 2022. Shortly after the initial announcement video and some off-screen gameplay, there were short videos on the behind the scenes for how the game was being developed uploaded to YouTube. These early clips of the game seemed rather promising considering the fact that it was like the game was being more so remastered and not remade. But in all honesty, I think most fans of Fear Effect would have been more happy to take that over what Reinvented has become. Other than that, any news on this game post early 2018 just didn't seem to exist. Unless you went to the public Discord server for Forever Entertainment, where if you were just like some other people wondering what happened to the game, you'd get the response of, we'll show you more footage soon, and nothing more than that. Now I'll talk about the public Discord in just a moment, but I did want to talk about the games that were already announced after Fear Effect Reinvented and have either released at this point or are close to releasing at this point. There are a few exceptions to this rule, however. Panzer Dragoon Remake was announced on June 11th, 2019 and was later released on March 26th, 2020. On April 15th, 2021, the House of the Dead remake was announced and was later released on April 7th, 2022. On February 9th, 2022, Front Mission First was announced and was later released on November 30th, 2022, after a delay for initial promises of a summer 2022 release window. Front Mission 2 Remake was announced on September 13th, 2022, and is slated for a 2023 release window. Front Mission 3 Remake is in the works, but has yet to be officially announced. On September 28th, Magical Drop 6 was announced with a release window of this winter, although likely it will follow a similar situation to Front Mission First and release past that release window. Night Slashers, The House of the Dead 2, and Panzer Dragoon Zwei remakes are the other additional games that are in the works with no official announcement trailers or release dates. As you can see, we have 9 different games, some of which have already been released at this point, and some of which have yet to be revealed. Now, to get back to the public Discord server, I was in there for some time, and while I don't keep up with other servers that I'm in much, I did notice that anytime anyone would ask if there was any news on the remake for Fear Effect, they were always met with similar responses of, we'll show you new footage soon. And in my eyes, it really got annoying to constantly see that, so I just decided to flat out say that I think the devs should just admit to more or less canning the game, because for years we'd been given promises of news and seeing nothing of it. When I did that, my comment, rather than being addressed to potentially quell my fears of this remake just never happening as an interested consumer, my comment was just simply deleted. To be totally honest, I was kind of hoping I was going to be banned from the server just for rubbing the devs the wrong way over it, but I think deleting my comment just showed me they either didn't care or they really weren't concerned of what people thought of them or the game itself. Fear Effect Reinvented just so happened to be re-announced on August 24th, 2022 to a very mixed reaction amongst people. There are people who are genuinely still very interested in the direction that Fear Effect Reinvented is going in, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with being interested in a product. However, there are also people like myself that feel this was not what was promised and that we had been lied to about this product. To reiterate, the initial announcement back in August 21st, 2017 promised a true to the original remake of Fear Effect 1 with improved graphics and controls coming soon. And this could not be further from the truth. Forever Entertainment even has the audacity to still leave that claim in the description of the new announcement trailer for the game, albeit slightly reworded. Now, I have no personal connection or nostalgia for Fear Effect. Prior to this video, I have never played any of the games, but when I see a promise like this and suddenly it no longer being the case, it just feels like I had been swindled into believing that this was going to be a quality remake. Let me emphasize this too, that just because Fear Effect Reinvented was going to be a fixed camera angled game just like the original, it doesn't mean that it would have been a good remake or a good game on its own. However, in a time where we're getting several AAA horror games, whether they be sequels, new games, or remakes, it going the over-the-shoulder route also means it stands out less compared to those games. For reference, here are some of the games that are coming out or have already come out that are over the shoulder: Resident Evil 4 Remake, Dead Space Remake, Alone in the Dark Remake, the Callisto Protocol, Alan Wake 2, and the Silent Hill 2 Remake. Now, one of the games that has already come out is the Callisto Protocol, which, if you want to hear some of my thoughts on the game, you can check out the recent podcast we did in the description or on the iCard in the top right corner. That said, the other game that is already released at this point is the Dead Space Remake. With that in mind, I just really wanted to point out that with several horror games coming out or that are already out with the same playstyle, what does Fear Effect have to stand out on its own? This is something that I've taken issue with even on the Silent Hill 2 remake, for example, and to be fair, I had similar issues when Resident Evil 7 was coming out as a first-person horror game, because at the time, everybody was coming out with a first-person horror game in the AAA market. Now we're seeing something similar with multiple over-the-shoulder games in horror, where we're seeing a very lack of variety in the kinds of horror games we're getting simply based on that playstyle, at least in the AAA market. Now, you could make the argument that even if it's an over-the-shoulder game, that doesn't mean that this remake will be a bad one per se, and that's a fair take to have, but my counterpoint to that is look at how Forever Entertainment's remakes have been received generally. They're mixed. They're generally mixed. Again, I personally don't have any nostalgia for Fear Effect itself, but when you make bold claims such as a true to the original remake of Fear Effect 1 with improved graphics and controls coming soon, it's the failure to clearly uphold the promise that bothers me so much. And sure, had the remake stuck to the original playstyle with some quality of life changes, that wouldn't necessarily mean that the game would have been a good remake. There could have been a number of ways that this would have been a bad remake. The reason why I feel that I need to emphasize this particular statement is because it was promised to consumers. Now, I just want you to take a look at my gameplay of the original versus what this new remake is going to play like. Excuse my poor gameplay because I'm still learning how to play the original game, but the question that I want to pose to you, the viewers, is what part of this remake, from a gameplay perspective, looks anything like a quote true to the original remake of Fear Effect 1 with improved graphics and controls? As I've mentioned before, Forever Entertainment has announced and already released several games prior to Fear Effect Reinvented. Of the games that have been released, they seem to release with mixed reception as mentioned prior. But why is that? Well, digging into it further, it seems that they primarily source most of the development to one team, Megapixel. Now, I do want to emphasize that I don't personally think that Megapixel is full of people that just don't care about delivering quality products. Just looking at this dev diary on the studio when talking about the development for the House of the Dead remake, I don't get the impression that the developers themselves don't care about what they do. That being said, I think that the main issue is that they as a studio are not only taking on too many projects at once, but they are just not up to the task for delivering products that fans of these games would want consistently. I mean, even in the dev diary, they say that they think it's important to have artistic freedom while referencing the quote-unquote original game. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for artistic freedom for developers, but I can also see how too much of it can cause a game especially a remake, to stray far away from the original appeal of that game. I also think that when the concern is more so to make references to the original game and not remake a game as close as possible to the original, it leads to a lack of quality control in the correct places. As mentioned before, Megapixel is primarily sourced for most of the remake projects. However, Forever Entertainment is clearly able to go to other potentially better studios like they're doing with the Front Mission 2 remake, which is being handled by Storm Trident. Now the key word here is potentially better, because after looking into some of the games that Storm Trident has worked on, most of them are either mixed or not even reviewed on Metacritic. So I think what it ultimately boils down to is that Forever Entertainment can solve this particular issue if they can do one of three things. Firstly, stop sourcing development primarily to Megapixel, or at the very least stop giving them too many projects to work on. Let them finish the projects they've started before having them take on new ones. Have Storm Trident possibly assist them with these projects, or perhaps take on a full project. But if those things just don't seem to result in quality, maybe consider looking for developers that have a better track record, potentially outside of Poland. I'm not sure if this is primarily an issue of trying to save money by sticking with local talent, but I think when your products are consistently coming out with mixed or negative reviews, then maybe it's time to look in places where talented devs can truly bring these remakes to life, whilst also keeping what makes the fans love them intact. Before I conclude today's video, I just want to clarify that I don't want this video to be used to attack the devs. I'm sure that they love what they do and have a passion for it, and the same could be said about Forever Entertainment as a publisher. However, in light of the things that I've taken notice of, more so as an outsider looking in, I would just want them to try to take some of the critiques that I and possibly other people have into consideration. If they can show that they're open to criticism and at least show that they're trying to right their previous wrongs, then I'd like to see what they potentially have in store for the future. However, should more remakes like Fear Effect come out where they initially promise something only to go completely back on their word, then I think people would need to stop buying their games. Though whether or not that ever happens, and if people actually stick to a boycott like that, would remain to be seen. So only time will tell if the quality of their games will get better. Until then, I'd like to thank you all for making it to the very end of this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like, leave a comment, maybe even consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next one, hopefully sooner rather than later. Matane.